Hi everyone, my name is Jan Lightfoot and I'm speaking to you today from Vacaville, California. It's a pleasure to be with everybody in the Plano Photography Club today. I'd like to start by giving you my own philosophy on judging. My own images tend to reflect a long association with classical and traditional compositions and photography. I've adopted a less is more vision over the years, and I try to incorporate this philosophy into practically everything that I shoot. I try to search for the essence of the subject, that quality that is not always obvious. That's what I strive to capture, and in doing so, I try to create a connection with the viewer that touches them on an emotional level. And based on this philosophy, I've had occasion to do judging, and I also do one-on-one critiques. And my philosophy has always been to provide the maker of an image with honest, positive feedback. I stress the importance that a critical yet constructive analysis is a valuable tool to learn to see creatively, to build a portfolio, or to simply acquire better understanding of photography. My ultimate goal in judging here today is to help you to find expression through your own style of photography. And without further ado, we'll get started. Okay, we're starting at the beginner's level. The first image is Sea Lace with a score of 8. I see what the photographer was going for here. The patterns of the lacy foam in the water is really, really nice, and it's got a nice textural quality to it. I think what this image is lacking, however, is a focal point. Perhaps a group of people on the rocky shore, or a boat, or a seal, or something to give your eye something to ultimately rest on. And also, in landscape photography, you need to make sure your horizons are straight, otherwise it doesn't look quite normal. So the next one is Sunrise at Lake Creek, Wyoming. I like the composition in this image. I would like to see a lower point of view perhaps. Sometimes I know that's not possible, but the rocks in the left-hand side offer some interest, and I think if you were actually lower and could incorporate some of that into the image as a foreground, it would help the composition a little here. And also be aware that shadows in early morning can cause whites to go blue, and this image has a predominant blue cast. You'll want to whiten those whites up a bit in post-processing. The next image looks cold with a score of 9. I looked at this image for quite a few minutes before I realized there was actually a boat out there. It's a very expansive scene. I like the theme here of the icebergs with the liquid water. That's nice, but it's a bit static. Perhaps this image would be well suited for a panoramic, maybe by cropping off a third of the bottom and making it a pano would emphasize the boat in the water a little bit more. The next image is Bubble Boy with a score of 9. You can really see that he's very experienced in blowing these huge bubbles, which have a lovely liquid quality about them. The background is a little distracting. I'd really like to see you get even closer in on his expression, perhaps shooting through the bubble to capture his expression and at the same time capture what it is he's doing. For example, his left hand holding the stick through the bubble, which is really nice. I'd like you to zoom in and really capture that action right there. The next image, a small falls with a score of 10. This is a nice tranquil scene. Good use of shutter speed. It seems to be fairly sharp throughout. This would actually possibly make a nice vertical image as well. In the foreground, you see those two rocks off to the left. I do like those there. They help to give the image some scale. They're a little tight up on the left side of the frame, though. Perhaps by just incorporating those in, moving them over to the right a little bit more, would give them a little bit more breathing room. Overall, a nice image. The next image is Amalgamation with a score of 10. I like the pre-visualization in this image. It really brings out the theme of liquids very nicely. You've got this sort of green, creepy stuff that is in there. We don't know what it is, or I don't know what it is anyway. And it's sort of overflowing the glass vessel that it's in. Nice detail, done technically well, interesting subject. Liquid Abstract with a score of 11 is an honorable mention, and the photographer is Aaron Lesher. This has some bright and bold color in it, which really gives it some impact. The use of primary colors, blue and red, and you have a touch of yellow in there, really stand out. What we are looking at could be manipulated color or it could be real. We don't know. But it seems to me that the real emphasis here is on the color. Interpretation of liquid. Tears. It touches our emotions and we wonder where the tears might be coming from. Reducing the elements here into black and white is a nice touch. Good lighting. The point of focus, however, is not quite on the eye itself. It's sharp on the forehead and on the lips, but not on the eye, not on the right eye where the tears are. And also I think the left eye should be either included in the image or not at all. Second place is Blue Water Tiles with a score of 12. The maker is Joyce Magnum. Here is a reflection a little bit different from the earlier one in the sense that we are seeing a pattern through the water. This suggests a texture which tends to speak to our sense of touch. And of course, adding the water really gives motion to the image. When you're shooting an image like this, the one thing you don't have in a pattern or a reflection or something like that often is a focal point. So your textures do have to have a visual interest, which this does. First place is The Reflection with a score of 14 by Jack Huang. Please forgive me, by the way, if I'm not pronouncing your names correctly. But this image is really interesting for me. The overlapping elements here really keep my eye engaged in this image. It's bright, there's a lot of detail to explore. Very nicely done. Really good contrast. Overall, just a very fun, really engaging image to look at. Moving on to the intermediate level, we'll start with Old Buckets Hold the Darkest Water with a score of 8. I like the title of this image, and I like the concept of this too. I'd like to see a little bit more of the bucket though, I think. And also for this image, it seems that depth of field is an issue. There's a sharp point on the right where the pink flowers are. There is no sharp point on the flower on the left, and it's a bit bright also. So I think improving your depth of field, using a greater depth of field here would be beneficial. Human point of view, though, I would like to be able to make a connection with his face, or at least see the expression on his face. but I think it's a good action shot. It's technically well done, and the composition is very nice. Living in Liquid with a score of 10. I like this because what better way to describe liquids than to be living in it? It's colorful, it's got a fish in there to give it scale. The coral, which I believe that's a coral in the front there, I'd like to see it actually attached to the ground somehow. As with trees in a composition or plants, even people, animals, you want to see their feet on the ground. So you want to see that connection there. It looks similar to what we have in California here called a merganser, so it might be the same species. It's a beautiful reflection, and he really blends in nicely. His coloring is it picks up the colors in the reflection. You can see a nice liquidy pattern in the wake around him, and I'd almost think about cropping off from the left, or at least cropping it down more so that it emphasizes that wake in contrast to the bird. Reynolds Gully is an honorable mention with a score of 12, and the photographer is Ron Lynn. Well done technically, good subject, good use of shutter speed. I like the little point of interest with a smaller waterfall down in the left-hand corner. That's a nice touch. Overall, though, I believe it's a little bit warm. I'd like to see not so much yellow in the image. By taking some of that yellow out, I think you can get a bit more natural look. The Brew is also an honorable mention with a score of 12 by James Berry. This is a fun image. Again, I appreciate the pre-visualization that the photographer had in seeing this and setting it up. Technically, it's very well done. I wish that the stream of cream, however, was a little bit sharper. But overall, I like the crop. You've used the cup to frame the swirls of cream in there, and it's very graphic. It has a very nice graphic quality to it. Feel to it, and I just like it because of the repetitive patterns, the water drops falling through space with stars on them, and you can see the star actually repeated in the background as a background element. So all in all, very nicely done. Second place is Frozen Liquid with a score of 14 by Brian Zumbar. This has just a lovely quality about it. I love that you went in and did a microscopic view of liquid from this point of view. Beautiful variations of blue tones in this image with a touch of yellow. Very nicely done. It's a little sparse up in the upper left-hand corner. I would like to see that filled in better, but just overall a very nice image. A Sea of Glass and Concrete with a score of 14 by James Edward. I really like the fact that you saw liquid in this metal sculpture. It's a great representation of liquid, I think. After all, at one time, this was liquid in the formation of making this. Nice shutter speed with people moving in the foreground. You have some people moving and some people who are static and simply enjoying being around this wonderful piece of sculpture. And I love the black and white interpretation of this as well. There's nice contrasts of lights and darks. However, my eye really finds no place to actually rest here. Perhaps some quieter water in the foreground may allow my eye to rest on something a little less turbulent. A splash of blue with a score of 9. This is a great concept. I really wish that there was a point of sharpness here because I think it would have been an excellent image. In a close-up like this, I think it's important that something is sharp, in the foreground especially, closest to the viewer's eye. So if I stand back from this image, it looks better, but then I lose detail in it. Bread and wine, and all the elements are positioned nicely, and all combined there's a definite sense of organization. Perhaps a bit more breathing room, however, would be good down where the plate is almost touching the bottom of the frame. I'm assuming that because of the low light, this was probably done on a tripod, and therefore I would like to see greater depth of field. You got a little blurriness in the bread and I believe the olive jar. They could be a little bit sharper. 72 degrees north, 19 degrees west with a score of 11. This is a powerful image, just where I don't want to be during a storm. You really caught the wave nicely though, with its position making a diagonal line across the image, which really emphasizes the motion. And the spray is an indication of really how strong the wind was. I'm assuming you were safe inside a ship or something somewhere though, and I think you could make this image a bit stronger by cloning out some of the reflections that are visible, for example, up in the left-hand corner of the image. The pause that refreshes with a score of 12. This has a nice graphic appeal to it. Very simple, clean lines. One almost instantly knows we're looking at a glass of Coke or a Pepsi, which it's sort of an implied suggestion. And nice gradations of light and color from top to bottom. Which create a naturally beautiful scene. The lines are very dominant in here. Could almost make this an 8 by 10, I think. And I'd like to see a little bit of lightning in the shadows, perhaps, a little bit more detail in the shadows, and just a bit more contrast in those light and dark areas. Elixir, with a score of 13, is an honorable mention by Bud Barlow. This is a very creative and technically well done image. One vertical line connects all the elements, and I like the concept. The liquid gold falling onto the sunflower, turning it gold, perhaps, and then the drops of gold coming off of the flower. The drops look a bit elongated, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. But overall, this is a very well thought out image. Refreshing glass of clouds and grass with a score of 13 is also an honorable mention by Karen Cheney. The inversion of clouds and grass makes for a really interesting abstract subject. And this is one of those instances also where the uniform shape of the glass might work well in a more symmetrical format, such as a square format. It certainly works being off-center as well, but again, I could see it in a square format also. It's very nice. Cherry acts as a focal point and complements nicely with the red in the background. It's very symmetrical. And I like the fact that the maker combined the ice with the water. Making Waves with a score of 14 is the second place image by Jim Shannon. This is a well-constructed image. The use of diagonal lines with her arms suggesting motion really draw our attention. And I really like that the fingers just are barely above the water in this. The blue in her dress reflects nicely with the blue in the water. A real sense of peacefulness comes from this image. Hops. The concept was very well thought out. It's technically very, very well done. I have no idea how it was done, but this could be an ad for jalapenos. Even the configuration of the water is making a really, really nice S-curve. So everything cooperated here, and it turned out very, very well. We're now at the master's level, and the first image is Water Games with a score of 9. We have the dog swimming in the water towards the stick, and he's making quite a wake, which runs diagonally through the image and gives us a real sense of motion here. However, I really would like to, again, connect with the dog's face, see his expression, possibly see him making contact with the stick. I'd rather see that instead of the back of his head. Sea Spray with a score of 9. First thing that struck me in this image is that there's no railing, which would never happen here in California. It's a good moment. It really speaks to its unique location. In my mind, though, I think in a situation like this, you have to make a choice whether you want that water to be frozen in motion or whether you want to really create a sense of motion and perhaps use a longer shutter speed. It just feels to me like the choice hasn't been made. It was sort of indecisive. Into the mountains in the background show nice depth. There is tension though, however, where the top of the water spray arc is touching the horizon of the mountains, and possibly a different point of view or shooting this from a different perspective could have handled that a little bit better. Dancing Paint with a score of 10. Again, a lot of thought and effort went into creating this image. It's a fun image. The colors are really nice. The background is nice. I think, however, when you are dealing with something so random as drops of paint, however, you still have to be mindful of the composition. For example, there's a lot of sort of dead space between the left side of the image and the center. So that could conceivably be cropped out. And the entire image is also soft. So I would just say try this again, hone your skills, and work on getting it sharp. High Tide with a score of 11. Intense color in this. It reminds me of something I would see in Yellowstone, perhaps. However, I only really know that it's high tide by the title. I can't really determine if it's high tide by looking at the image, so I wish there was something there like a starfish or sea urchin to give me more perspective about this image. It'd tell me a little bit more about it. Seltzer Water, score 11. This has a nice graphic appeal to it with the circles of the bottleneck and the lines in the glass. It falls off a little bit on the left side. The light falls off a little bit, and I think this could be a little bit more dramatic if it was darkened up a little bit. It seems to be somewhat underexposed to me. So I would suggest increasing the exposure, thereby allowing the whites to stand out a little bit more and give it more contrast. Liquid cliff with a score of 12. Well, mountain streams always provide great opportunities for reflections, and this is no exception. I like the play of blue or almost purple with the yellow. It's very nice. I like the vertical position of the reflection, and it provides a feeling of strength here. And the foreground interest is nice in that there's you're showing some of the rocks at the bottom. Very compelling. It's got nice texture to it. It works well, and it works very well as an abstract. Swirls score is 12. Another abstract made possible by reflections. They're also interesting, each one different. Here the blue, red, and almost yellow are all primary colors. The black line really gives the image distinction between the colors. And I do like the fact that it was shot from a fairly low angle. This could work well also, I believe, as a horizontal image. I find it very interesting. Predominantly blues and greens here with a tinge of yellow. I think the yellow could be emphasized a little bit more. And also maybe the edges, like the bright spot on top of the image, on the edge of the image, could be cloned out. But overall, I really like the overall point of view that this offers. Dancing Drop Collision with a score of 13 is an honorable mention by Maria Downey. This is very well executed, very sharp water drop, and it's also sharp in the reflection below. I like the spectrum of color here. The only thing I'm seeing is there is some noise apparent in the drop of the shadow itself and in the stem of the splash there. And I think by applying some noise reduction, you could help to eliminate that, darken that up a little bit. Otherwise, it's a fabulous image. No Bull, Just a Splash. This is an honorable mention with a score of 14 by Lee Hatfield. The black background here really, really makes this image pop. It looks like an ice sculpture, and without reading the title, I probably would not have realized what I was looking at, but this really does look like a bull. And I like the two objects on either side. It helps to sort of support and frame the image itself. Again, an overhead view, it looks like of ripples. It's very pleasing to my eye. There's a lot of depth in this image that is apparent. There's also some gold and blue in there which add interest to this. I just want to reach out and touch it. Raindrops Keep Falling with a score of 15. This is the second place image by Russell McGuire. Her face, her expression really grabs your attention here. Very well executed image, great depth of field. The green background suggests a natural setting. I really like the fact that the water here, the liquid, is in various states of motion. I only wish there was maybe a brighter catchlight in her eyes. Is the first place image with a score of 15 by Danette Volkmer. I like everything about this image. Its simplicity, its elegance, it's got a wonderful painterly look. this is what I look for in an image, is something that speaks to me and yet is not obvious in an image, because I really feel this image. It's very inviting, and I wish I could just simply go down that ladder and jump in the water. And now comes the part where I get to choose best image. It was very difficult because there were a few images that I really liked a lot, and I struggled with this. But I'm going to go with Cool Jalapeno by Don Champlin. I think it's an outstanding image. I think it was well executed, well thought out, and simply a lot of fun. In closing, I would just like to say thank you very much for inviting me to be a judge for the Camera Club tonight. I really enjoyed the theme. I really enjoyed judging, and I saw a lot of really nice images. And I just hope that everyone leaves tonight with perhaps my vision of how your particular image